Hello there, everyone. Welcome. This camera angle is very unflattering. I will send you my playlist, my Depression Days playlist. Kind of helps. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, it is another week. It is my husband's birthday week. It is almost my birthday. My birthday is next week, Wednesday. So I'm still deciding whether I'm going to have a reading on that day or not. But yeah. Well, as usual with Tuesday readings, we are reading about race and why Reni Eddo-Lodge is no longer talking to white people about race. You can follow along if you are able to, if you have the book in front of you, or if you have the PDF, which you can find in my server, in my Discord server, which you can find in my link tree. Thank you, Sam. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you, Sam. I haven't seen you in a while. Okay, I don't know what the green screen is doing today. Thank you, Molly. Let me just do this and see if it's because of the dust on the screen. Possibly. Nope, did not help. All right, so I'm here on Twitch, YouTube, Discord, and the Tiki-Talkie. And you can also find me on Upscrolled. There is a new social media platform. Yay, another one. It is called Upscrolled. It was built by a Palestinian Australian man who was tired of the censorship that we face on other Eurocentric Western imperialist forms of social media. And yeah, we can connect there. Hopefully soon that they will have live functionality, so we will be able to move across from other places. Also, hello Tarot, no worries. All good. And let us begin. So, last week we started talking about the feminism question in white feminist spaces, ignoring the race issue, because obviously white feminists don't really like to think of themselves as racist. Actually, nobody likes to think of themselves as racist, but people need to reckon with the fact that yes, every person who has an intersection of racial privilege has the capacity to be racist, anti-black, or variations thereof. So she was talking about white feminists not understanding what it means to be a black woman in the UK who is also feminist. And I stopped reading last week because of one major thing. I had the epiphany, almost, that white people cling to their whiteness. They get so offended when you talk about whiteness because they are so entrenched in it. But it's not just that. It's that they create a monolith out of everybody else. They expect us to do the same with them. So they try to individualize themselves away from the larger narrative of whiteness. So, it's with that we continue on page 156. In Black Feminists, we use the word intersectionality to talk about the crossover of two distinct discriminations, racism and sexism. That happens to people who are both black and women. For black feminist academic Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, it was her study in law that led her to coin the now mainstream term. When we met in London's US Embassy, she told me, "That work started when I realized that African American women were not recognized as having experienced discrimination that reflected both race and gender. The courts would say if you don't experience racism in the same way as a black man does, or sexism in the same way as a white woman does, then you haven't been discriminated against." Which is wild. I saw that as a problem of sameness and difference. There were claims of being seen as too different to be accommodated by law. That led to intersectionality, looking at the ways in which race and gender intersect to create barriers and obstacles to equality. This was a word used to describe the previously undefined phenomenon, although black feminist activists, scholars, and theorists had written and spoken about the very same things years before Crenshaw gave it a name. In 1851, black abolitionist and women's rights activist Sojourner Truth addressed the Ohio Women's Rights Convention. She said, "I think that twixt the N-words of the South and the women of the North, all talking about rights, the white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there say that women needs to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into a carriage or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talks about this thing in the head. What's it they call it? Intellect." Someone whispered nearby. "That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights or N-word rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you mean not to let me have my little half measure full?" The speech was published 12 years later in the National Anti-Slavery Standard. A century on, in 1984, black feminist, activist, and poet Audre Lorde wrote Sister Outsider, essays and speeches. Women of today are still being called upon to stretch across the gap of male ignorance and to educate men as to our existence and needs. This is an old and primary tool of all oppressors, to keep the oppressed occupied with the master's concerns. And that is why I keep on saying, don't let them distract us. Do not let them distract us. Because they want to keep us occupied with all of their questions so that we are distracted from the point of what we're really fighting for. Hi, B. Now we hear that it's the task of women of color to educate white women in the face of tremendous resistance as to our existence, differences, relative goals in our joint survival. This is a diversion of energies and a tragic repetition of racist patriarchal thought. In 1979, her essay Anger in Isolation, a black feminist search for sisterhood, from the essay collection But Some of Us Are Brave, Michelle Wallace wrote, "We exist as women who are black, who are feminist, each stranded for a moment, working independently, because there is not yet an environment in this society remotely congenial to our struggle, because being on the bottom, we would have to do what no one has done. We would have to fight the world." Then Bell Hooks stepped forward in 1981, writing Ain't I a Woman? Black Women and Feminism. The process begins with the individual woman's acceptance that women, without exception, are socialized to be racist, classist, and sexist in varying degrees, and that labeling ourselves feminist does not change the fact that we must consciously work to rid ourselves of the legacy of negative socialization, and I would say even towards ourselves. It is obvious that many women have appropriated feminism to serve their own ends, especially white women who have been at the forefront of these movements. But rather than resigning myself to this appropriation, I choose to reappropriate the term feminism, to focus on the fact that to be feminist, in any authentic sense of the term, is to want for all people, men and women, liberation from sexist role patterns, domination, and oppression. And while Kimberly Crenshaw coined the phrase, this is exactly what Reni Eddo-Lodge is saying. Hundreds of people have written about it and spoken about it before, just without the name intersectionality. And yes, it is a theory that can be applied across the board about how we think about different forms of oppression and privilege that kind of overlap and intersect each other. And that's why I speak about intersections of privilege and oppression, because each of us has some. A little bit of each. Because even though a black woman in the United States is still far lower on the social ladder than I am, what gives her privilege over me is first world, is being of the first world, is being from the US that has a stronger passport than me. I am from the global south. I don't have that kind of privilege, but I have every other kind of privilege over that black woman. Sorry, I need to reply to something here. Okay. In a law lecture delivered to London's Birkbeck University in late 2013, Angela Davis expanded on the history of how black women have articulated their experiences over the years. In 1969, she explained, American civil rights activist Frances Beale wrote a pamphlet called Double Jeopardy, to be black and female. Later, the Third World Women's Alliance created a newspaper called Triple Jeopardy. For them, the struggle was not just against racism and sexism, but imperialism too. Elizabeth Spellman's 1988 book, Inessential Woman, challenged the methods of adding on oppression a year before Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality. America, with its grid-like road system, neatly packed full of perfect rectangles and squares, was the right place for the birth of this metaphor. Every person knows a place where all roads meet, a place where there is no longer one distinct road, but instead a particular spot, a place that merges all of the roads leading up to it. Black women in these theories were proof that the roads did not run parallel, but instead crossed over each other frequently. And the aforementioned woman writer's work thoroughly illustrates how much richness and depth there is to be found when examining these intersections, instead of denying they exist or forgetting them altogether. For too long, black women have been the forgotten and have had to come up with strategies of being remembered. In the analysis of who fell through the cracks in competing struggles for rights for women and rights for black people, it always seemed to be black women who took the biggest hit. When black feminists started to push for intersectional analysis in British feminism, the widespread response from feminists who were white was not one of support. I'm not surprised. Instead, they began to make a case that the word intersectional was utter jargon, difficult for anyone without a degree to understand, and therefore useless. Bitch, please. If you haven't got the same background or affinity with academia, though, intersectionality is a word that says this is not for you, wrote Sarah Dittam on her personal blog in 2012. In the New Statesman, Holly Baxter and Rhiannon Lucy Coslet wrote, this means that issues of race, class, religion, sexuality, politics, and privilege often end up fracturing feminist dialogue, most regularly causing disagreements between those armed with an MA in gender studies and a large vocabulary to match and those without. Going to certain state comps and discussing the nuances of intersectionality isn't going to have much dice if some of the teenage girls in the audience are pregnant or hungry or at risk of abuse. What are they going to do? Protect or feed themselves with theory? Women cannot dine on Greer alone. It almost seems as though some educated women want to keep feminism for themselves, cloak it in esoteric theory and hide it under their mattress, safe and warm beneath the duck-down duvet. And this is why I constantly say every accusation is a confession. Because this is an excuse for gatekeeping feminism from working for black and brown women. It's just an excuse. It is safeguarding it for whiteness. To be a safe space for whiteness to be racist under the guise of fighting for women's rights. As the debate intensified on social media, feminists who did not comply with this line were routinely monstered in the press. Jabs were kept just about evasive enough so that no particular woman was named, so there was little response published from those being criticized. Sadie Smith wrote in the New Statesman, "The online women mob takes offense everywhere. Women spelt WIMMIN. How fucking racist is that? But particularly at other women who are not in their little mean girls club, which has their own over-stylized and impenetrable language, rules, and disciplinary proceedings. The white feminist distaste for intersectionality quickly evolved into a hatred of the idea of white privilege, because to recognize structural racism would have to mean recognizing their own whiteness. They were backed up by their men, obviously. Tom Midlane wrote also in the New Statesman, "While the idea is obviously born out of honorable intentions, the whole discourse around privilege is inherently destructive, at best a colossal distraction. Whiteness is so fucking toxic. At worst, a means of turning us all into self-appointed moral guardians, out to aggressively police even fellow travelers' speech and behavior. Why does it matter, you ask? The answer is simple. It matters because privilege checking has thoroughly infected progressive thought." Yeah, because they don't want to check their own privilege. They don't want to acknowledge it. Because acknowledging their own privilege means that they would have to reckon with themselves. Truly reckon with themselves. And they don't want to do that. Notice a trend here. Between 2012 and 2014, the most spirited takedowns of black women talking about race, racism, and intersectionality were always published via the New Statesman, Britain's most centre-left political magazine. I begin to wonder if there was an editorial line. There were weak efforts by the New Statesman to publish rebuttals by defenders of intersectionality, but it was the harsh criticisms that seemed to set the magazine's agenda. A few years later, the arguments first put forward by white feminists and left-wing bloggers were being echoed by publishing platforms that were decidedly not left-wing. The extreme hard-right website Breitbart defined intersectionality as a debate strategy. When you're losing an argument about feminism, call your opponent racist or, more damagingly, capitalist, and define privilege as white middle-class feminists, what white middle-class feminists have that their victims don't. In another dictionary-style takedown of progressives, The Spectator wrote, "I is for identity politics. Define yourself by your natural characteristics rather than your character, achievements, or beliefs. You are first and foremost male, female, other, straight, black, gay, or white, and should refer to yourselves as such. Martin Luther King should have checked his privilege when he had that nonsense dream of a world where people will not be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. I love how white people abuse that, because that is so fucking audacious. They miss the point entirely. And it shows. That's easy for a middle-class straight man to say, Marty. I is also for intersectionality, the tearaway offspring of identity politics, where you must constantly wonder how your various personal identities intersect with each other or something. On the same topic, another writer in the same magazine wrote, "As theories go, this one isn't wholly mad. The trouble is, it has become faddish among people who don't read books or essays, but merely tweets and internet comments, and don't know what they're talking about." So, tell me, which one is it? Yes, JJ. Which one is it? Is it over-intellectual, or is it for people who read tweets and nothing else? It's a cat. So what you end up with is this kind of minority top trumps, a sort of spreading infectious belief that the more box-tickingly disadvantaged a person is, the wiser, kinder, and more all-seeing they must be, and it's stupid. Of course, it's going to defend itself by relying on projection. Whiteness always does. It projects. Colonialism projects. Whiteness projects. Patriarchy projects. Based on these responses, it seemed like black women's interventions in white British feminism were absolutely not welcome. Of course it wasn't. It still isn't. Black and brown people are not welcome in Britain. Please. The reaction was identical to the way most sexist men treat feminism. In the middle of this heated debate about intersectionality is British feminism, 4 months after my disastrous conversation with BBC Woman's Hour. Kimberly Crenshaw was invited to the same show to explain why feminism can no longer ignore race. She was asked, how helpful is it when black women are asking white and well-off women to check their privilege? Quoting of some black feminism's harshest critics, the interviewer continued, "It's closing down the debate and diminishing empathy." Seemed like they didn't really want an answer from Crenshaw. Her response was beautiful. That's always going to be an issue in any kind of movement that makes a claim that everybody in the category is experiencing discrimination in the same way, when in fact it's not often the case, she responded. But the damage was done. The utterance of memeified phrases saw black feminism reduced to nothing more than a disruptive force, upsetting sweet, polite, palatable white feminism. British feminism is characterized as a movement where everything is peaceful until the angry black people turn up. The white feminist characterizations of black feminists as disruptive aggressors was not so different from a broader stereotyping of black communities by the press. Women of color are always positioned as the immigrants of feminism, unwelcome but tolerated. A reluctantly dealt with social problem. And that's why I don't call myself feminist. Because the roots of feminism were racist. Feminism only seeks to benefit white women. And fuck that. It's surprising that no prominent white feminists made it far enough in their hyperbole to give an Enoch Powell-style impassioned speech, something along the lines of, in this country in 15 or 20 years' time, the black woman will have the whip hand over the white woman. Considering the verbal violence with which they greeted a race analysis in feminism, this seemed to be the logical conclusion of their argument. It's important to see the white feminists push back against intersectionality not in isolation, but rather in the historical context of establishment clampdowns on black struggle. All signs are there: the closing of ranks, the campaign of misinformation, lies, and discrediting. When Louise Mensch wrote her aggressive tweets about me, the woman she felt she was supporting were doyens of the left, regular writers for left leaning publications like The Guardian and Statesman. They were supported by white, well known writers and figures of a host of different political persuasions. But at that point, their minor political difference didn't matter. The white consensus in feminism required defending, and they needed to club it together. My speaking up about racism in feminism to them was akin to a violent attack on their very idea of themselves. And this is how racism perpetuates itself in all spaces, feminist or otherwise. My situation was public, but back then I had a feeling that similar scenarios were playing out across the country, in workplaces, social circles, families, and the result everywhere was a person of color with no support, doubting themselves. And that is how it's always been. If you go back on my most hot takes on Facebook from years ago, you will see white people in the comments saying, "So you're saying this?" Like, no, I said what I said. Read the status again. Oh no, but this is what it's implying. No. Read the status again. I said what I said. Oh, but you're saying that all white people. Whiteness closes ranks and very quickly thrusts out the brown person in the room. Catapults, more like it. Oh, definitely, JJ. Any questions? Okay, I don't think we're going to finish the chapter today, but we do have a bit of half an hour. Yes, it really does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wee break from, Twitch and YouTube. And I'll be back soon. And we're back on Twitch and YouTube. And of course, Discord. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. And if you are not in my server, please join. The link is in my link tree. And if you haven't, please, join Upscrolled. Oh no, not hiccups. Okay, I think we're okay. And if you are following, we are on page 166. In British feminism, questioning whether a woman could have feminist politics and do traditionally feminine things was a sentiment that intrigued women's magazines in the 90s and early 2000s. Can you be a feminist and wear high heels? The magazines asked. Can you be a feminist and wear makeup? Can you be a feminist and get your nails done? These were the most facile of questions, giving rise to the most facile of magazine features. The can you be feminist and questions were predicated on tired stereotypes of feminist activism from the 70s patriarchal press, depicting feminists as dungaree-wearing angry women who sought to crush men under their Dr. Martens clad feet. In this stereotype of the scary imaginary feminist that no woman would ever want to be, her appearance was the antithesis of all beauty standards that were set by patriarchy. It was complete rubbish, of course. In the past 5 years, if the past 5 years have taught us anything, it's that feminism is a broad church that has less to do with the upkeep of appearance and more to do with the upkeep of politics. Instead of asking about high heels and lipstick, the pressing questions have always been to ask, can you be feminist and anti-choice? Can you be feminist and willfully ignorant on racism? And I will add to that, can you be feminist and exclude queer people, especially trans women, from the conversations? Feminist themes seem to be ever present in television and film. This is a marked improvement from the media that went before it. Feminism is thriving in journalism and music and all over social media, with no signs of subsiding. The people who are calling themselves feminists are getting younger and younger due in part to their favorite pop stars and actresses demystifying the word. Each time a celebrity stakes her claim on feminism, a little bit of the stigma surrounding the word is shattered. I remember stitching a video with this woman saying, I'm not a feminist, I can actually cook. And she puts forward this dish that looks like it was seasoned with thoughts and prayers, and it was just boiled until the ancestors of the chicken cried. And I'm like, oh honey, you can't cook. With countrywide political landmarks like the legislation of same-sex marriage, everyone is keen to look like they approve of progress. But among feminists, there are a few ideological standpoints, race, reproductive rights, conservatism, that continue to cause immovable fault lines in the movement. Too often, a white feminist ideological standpoint does not see racism as a problem, let alone a priority. The backlash against intersectionality was white feminism in action. And white feminism, in protecting whiteness, protects patriarchy. When the phrase white feminism, used as a derogatory term, picked up circulation in the feminist lexicon, its popularity made some feminists who are white somewhat agitated. Quite an understatement. This knee-jerk backlash against the phrase, to what is more often than not a rigorous critique of the consequences of structural racism, was undoubtedly born from an entitled need to defend whiteness rather than yearning to reflect on the meaning of the phrase white feminism. What does it mean for feminist politics to be strangled, stopped, and hindered by whiteness? And that's an important question that every feminist, even feminists of color, need to ask. What does it mean if your feminism is informed by whiteness? What does it mean if your feminism is shaped by white supremacy? If feminism can understand the patriarchy, it's important to question why so many feminists struggle to understand whiteness as a political structure in the very same way. So on last week's video reading this book, I had another white person say something to the effect of, actually, I have it here. If I looked like you, I'd have an ugly sister complex with white people also. That was Rob's comment on the reading last week. If anybody wants to go and respond to him, please feel free. Similar to the fact that they are man-heavy, our most recognized political structures are white-dominated. In that space of overwhelming whiteness, there's always a wide range of opinions to be found. So much of politics is just middle-aged white men passing the ball to one another. Yeah, poor Rob. You know, he didn't have anything against the argument I was making, so he had to attack my appearance. And that is just men and whiteness in a nutshell. Like, you don't have anything of value to say, so you say, oh, but you're ugly. Like, fuck off with that. That is white maleness at work. Also, hi, Kagwar. Oh, it's on my YouTube. Every so often, a white middle-aged woman is brought on board in an effort to diversify. The one thing that unites these differing political perspectives is their flat-out refusal to challenge white consensus. White feminism is a politic that engages itself with myths such as I don't see race. It is a politic which insists about talking about race fuels racism, thereby denying people of color the words to articulate our existence. It is a politic that expects people of color to quietly assimilate to institutionally racist structures without kicking up a fuss. It's a politic where people of color are never setting the agenda. Instead, are relegated to constantly reacting to things frantically, playing catch-up. A white-dominated political consensus allows people of color a place at the table if we're willing to settle for tokenism, but clamps down if we attempt to create accountability for said consensus, let alone any structural change. That's so perfectly put. Whiteness positions itself as the norm, refusing to recognize itself for what it is. Its so-called objectivity and reason is the most potent and insidious tool for maintaining power. White feminism can be conceptualized as the feminist wings of said political consensus. It's a set of white-centered feminist values and beliefs that some women like to buy into. Other factors, like class indicators, play a huge part in it. White feminism in itself isn't particularly threatening, but it becomes a problem when its ideas dominate, presented as universal, to be applied to all women across the board. It is a problem because we consider humanity through the prism of whiteness. It is inevitable that feminism wouldn't be immune from this. Consequently, white feminism enforces its position when those who challenge it are considered troublemakers. When I write about white feminism, I am not reducing white women to the color of their skin. It is a political position, and challenging it in feminist spaces is not a tit-for-tat disagreement because prejudice needs power to be effective. And I think that is beautifully succinct. Prejudice needs power to be effective. The politics of whiteness transcends the color of anyone's skin. It is an occupying force in the mind, a political ideology that is concerned with maintaining power through domination and exclusion. Anyone can buy into it, just like anyone can choose to challenge it. White women seem to take the phrase white feminism personally, but it is at once everything and nothing to do with them. It's not about women who are feminists who are white. It's about women espousing feminist politics as they buy into the politics of whiteness, which, at its core, are exclusionary, discriminatory, and structurally racist. For those who identify as feminist but have never questioned what it means to be white, it is likely the phrase white feminism applies. Those who perceive every critique of white-dominated politics to be an attack on them as a white person are probably part of the problem. And that's what I tell people. Like, if it don't apply, let it fly. Also, cat. Hi, Stevie. There she is. When white feminists When white feminists are ignorant on race, they don't initially come from a place of malice, although their opposition can very quickly evolve into frothing vitriol when challenged on their politics. Instead, I've learned that they come from a place similar to mine. We all grew up in a white-dominated world. That is the context that white feminists are working within, benefiting from and reproducing a system that they barely notice. And they don't want to take that system down because it benefits them, because they don't want to give up that privilege, because it's so easy to live in that privilege. It's so much easier to live in that privilege than to give it up and relinquish what little power they have. Because we have seen what it costs people against a system when they stand against their own whiteness. And thank you, Hagar. I appreciate that. We have seen in the past few weeks what happens when someone relinquishes their whiteness in solidarity with people of color. They get gunned down in the streets. Their critical analysis skills are pretty good at spotting exclusive systems such as gender that they don't benefit from. They spout impassioned rhetoric against patriarchy with ease, feeling its sharp edge of injustice, jutting them in the ribs at work in the form of unequal pay and socially hurled at them in the street in the form of catcalling. And they rightly say, I am sick of living in this world built for the needs of men. I feel like at best I can fight it, at worst I have to learn to cope in it. Yet, they are incredibly defensive when the same analysis of race is leveled at their whiteness. You'd have to laugh if the whole thing wasn't so reprehensible. And this is an argument that I've had with men of color as well. If you can see racism, why can you not see sexism? Why can you not see patriarchy? Because it's a system you benefit from. I urge you to watch or listen to or read a speech by David Foster Wallace called This is Water. When they talk about equal rights and representation, white feminists deeply mean it. They can be witty, intelligent, eloquent, and insightful on issues like reproductive rights, street harassment, sexual violence, beauty standards, body image, and women's representation in the media. These are issues that so many women can strongly resonate with and relate to. It tends to be white women who find themselves representing feminism in the press, talking about it on TV or on the radio, enthusing about it in magazines. It helps that the white women espousing feminist politics in the public sphere are conventionally attractive enough, with enough of a quirk that renders them relatable to everyday women. They have chubby thighs or gappy teeth, like my gap tooth. They have bodies that are far from supermodel standard, that we've come to hold all women in the public eye to. This is refreshing, we shout. These women look like us. These women are real. These women are women's women. These women are not afraid to say what they think. In an age of Twitter followings and YouTube subscriber counts, it's also about personal branding and burgeoning careers. So we click, like, and follow. Trans women do not see themselves in cis women. Black and brown women do not see themselves in white women. There is no one single group that can represent all of us. Non-binary femmes do not find representation almost anywhere. I was told by an editor, this is confusing for a reader, that somebody can have they, them pronouns, because people might think that you're talking about plural, and they're going to ask who. To whom are you referring? Yeah, Jaguar. Please do. Of course you may. Yes.
Yeah, so when it comes to Spanish, because I feel like it's that same, you might get confused with a plural topic. We have three different ways to refer to second person singular. One of them is also plural. Use mi, ti, and si. And so when I say si, there's never a confusion in Spanish when I say like su or si, or I mean occasionally there is. It's very quick to just be like, oh, I see what you mean, and move on. So the fact that an editor doesn't think that it's possible to, have their readers differentiate between like they as in multiple and they as in singular is definitely, I'm forgetting the word, but like a moot point. It's completely untrue.
Yeah.
I've never once been confused about like seeing they them pronoun and being like, oh, I wonder how many people they're talking about. Like, come on, no.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah, that
it's wild. It's just
it is.
it's just queerphobia wrapped up in grammar.
That's it.
But
Even
thank
with
you.
the AS argument in Spanish, like it's all queer phobia. It's like it's not gonna confuse kids to have a third gender option in Spanish. Like I've never heard a kid like be confused about something like this. It's just actually wild, yeah. So the fact that it's happening in English, which is already kind of a gender neutral language to begin with,
Yeah,
is even wilder. Like if Spanish can do it, English can do it. I don't know.
it's like I learned French when I was younger, and the whole learn la, like everything is gendered,
Hmm.
and I find it hilarious that a penis is feminine and
Hmm.
a breast is masculine. I just find that
Hmm.
funny. But like English is not a language of um, gendered objects.
Mm-mm,
It's
not at all.
it's so much easier to like incorporate they as singular into language. In fact, they as singular was used before he and she.
Hmm. Absolutely, it was. Yeah.
And that was on the church's insistence, by the way, that he and she became part of our everyday lexicon.
Always one another reason to dislike the church. That's perfect. Yeah. Now I have another one.
Oh, as if we need more.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm going to actually stop there for today. Because this is going to get into a whole nother kettle of fish with David Cameron and whew, it's one of the reasons that I enjoy reminding people like, hey, when you say it's all patriarchy, no, 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 no. It's the systems that work together. It's capitalism, it's patriarchy, it's white supremacy, all working together. And you can't just say each distinct one has more importance than the other. It can have distinct importance in your struggle against the system as a whole, the system of essentially world domination through colonization, and patriarchy falls under colonization. White supremacy falls under colonization. Capitalism is the reason for colonization. It just it all comes back to one thing, and that is domination. Domination by any means for the most gain. And that's where I'm going to stop for today. I am going to be in the server in about 5 to 10 minutes. So yeah, I'll be back. And so please do yourself a favor. Take your meds, drink water, eat something, say something kind about yourself, smash the motherfucking patriarchy, eat all the white men. And if you don't eat meat, compost them. And remember to be kind to yourselves, because everybody deserves kindness, including you. But yeah, I shall see you all in the Discord server when I am back from just getting some fresh air and stretching a little bit. So yeah, if you've been sitting for a long time, please stretch. And remember, I do these readings for free, so my pay links are in my bio. It is my birthday month, so if you can, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Yeah, it's also husband's birthday month. It's his birthday on Saturday. Yeah, I am Aquarius. And yes, remember, the line of today from this book is prejudice needs power to be effective. That is, if there's anything you take away from today, it is prejudice needs power to be effective. And with that, I shall see y'all tomorrow. Same time, different book. I am going to play D&D later, so wish me luck. This is the first time I'm playing this character in years. Alright, I shall see y'all later. Bye.